We are live. How's it going, Mets fans? It's Wardy here, and folks, we have so much to get into in yet another Big Mets update segment. This time, a live edition, that being February 12th, 2025. At the time of recording this one, casually 15 minutes late to the live show because your guy Wardy was, of course, there on dad duty, putting my son to sleep, and now we're ready, set, and ready to go for this one, folks. Not only are we deep diving everything that transpired in Metsland today and Port St. Lucie, that Pete Alonso, the polar bear, has officially returned. He's officially back on that 2-year contract. We'll hear David Stearns' remarks as well as others. And you guys see him beside me there, Jet Williams, just one of many prospects trying to stand out there this spring training. We'll talk about how everyone's looking so far at this point, who's arrived for pitchers and catchers, as well as what's going on with the Mets and their newest signing, bringing back Drew Smith. Yes, you heard that correctly. Drew Smith is added back to this Mets bullpen. Not so much for the 2025 season, but a lot more potentially for the 2026 season. So we'll expand on that, as well as Jose Iglesias is Mr. OMG, Mr. Oh My No, he's gone. Yes, folks, it looks like that is a continued reality, or at least reaching a closer reality, that Jose Iglesias will not be repping a Mets uniform in 2025. We'll get into how exactly true is that, why I still have a sliver of optimism, even though I will say it is a sliver at this point in time. Clay Holmes is working on his Arsenal guys. He's ramping up big time, and he already looks locked and low to be a true starter in this rotation. The best part of it all is that we're breaking down all these key news and rumors and updates in Metsland with my guy Pat Ragazzo, who will be joining us in the next 10 to 15 minutes. For those that don't know Pat, he's been doing a tremendous job covering the Mets on the beat for them through an affiliate with Sports Illustrated. Pat will actually be touching down at Port St. Lucie right as we reach this weekend or so, so I'm happy to bring on Pat before he has his flight there to PSL, and I'm so excited for spring training this year. I cannot wait to be there. Like many of you Mets fans are already in the early attendance there, pitchers and catchers, so thank you guys so much for smashing like and subscribe as you chime in and spending some of your day, night, evening with Wardy here as we have you covered with everything in Metsland. News, rumors, prospects, key notes to get into, key updates, everything in between, folks. And on top of it all, we are doing a Mets jersey giveaway to one lucky subscriber, and all you guys gotta do to get in on the action for that jersey giveaway is to simply head over to the YouTube channel that you see here, click on that subscribe button if you haven't already, and once we get 32,000 subscribers, we're right around, I think, 400 away, so not even, we'll be giving away a jersey to one lucky winner for whatever player they currently want on the team. We've already given away a Juan Soto jersey. We gave away a Mets Juan Soto shirt jersey when we hit 31K as well. Now we're back in the jersey giveaway category, so I hope you guys get in on that once we officially hit our next milestone on the platform. But let's get a quick roll call in the live show, and then we will continue from there, folks. So excited to be talking shop, all things Mets with you guys this evening. I see Michael Neal, great member. How are you? I see Corey. How you doing? Bam Brian. Should I ban you, Brian? All jokes aside. Swaggin Burger. Odd Villain. Frankie. Madeline, how are you? Going up the list. Kiko going up the list. Corey, how are you? Matt, Zealot going up here even more. We got our guy Justin, Keith Bucco, Frankie Almeida, Paula. We got the Broken Jester, Sean Daniels, great member, Mark Brooks, great member, Thomas, great member. How you doing? We got Samich, how you doing? Scott A, Phil DeLuca, Jason, Tom, thank you guys so much. Come one, come all. We appreciate you guys. Hope you all are doing fantastic. What's good, Molo? How are you? Appreciate you chiming in. Dominic, great member. Vin, man, Matt, all you guys are amazing. And I don't want to waste too much time here, folks, because as I said, we have plenty to get into, so I want to do exactly that. And let's first start by getting into the news that we saw earlier today, folks. Yes, you guys can say it with me. Drew Flo is back. A man that I honestly did not anticipate to be returning to this Mets bullpen. However, he is in fact coming back, not so much for the 2025 season, but a whole lot more for the 2026 season. Drew Smith, as many of you Mets fans know, some of you guys love Drew Flo. That's his nickname to some. Some of you guys are not a fan of Drew Smith. I was fairly critical of his over the past couple of years at times, just because Drew Smith, it felt like every single time he'd get on a roll, all it would take would be that meatball, the fastball right down the pipe for a 2-run shot, and then bam, anything and everything that I felt positive on Drew Smith quickly came to a close. And what I will say about Drew Smith and why I have no issues with this is because, one, you can never have enough arms, right? The Mets are bringing back Drew Smith for the simple reason of A, so he can rehab all throughout the year there in this Mets organization still versus being with another team. The Mets obviously had an intrigue to bring Drew Smith back as he posted a sub-4 ERA, but an over 4 expected ERA in his limited outings this past season. And like I said, Smith did have a sliver of success with the Mets this past last year. But when he did, it was also backed by some home run heroics from the opposing team. That was nothing short of frustrating pretty much every single time it happened. When it comes to the home run ball, that's an issue for Drew Smith that he will need to continue to work on when it comes to the walk rate as well. And again, just having life with your fastball, because it's been a meatball at times that we've seen with Drew. So he signs with the Mets to rehab for all of 2025, more than likely. They're staying in the organization, working in Port St. Lucie, among other areas, and then hopefully he's ready to go for 2026, and then he'll be competing for a bullpen spot. The Mets have a club option, which is chef's kiss, which means that they have no full commitment to Drew Smith for 2026. It is up to them, and they want to even consider Drew Smith as a reliever option for this bullpen for the 2026 season. But the reason why we bring it up now is because the Mets just officially did the signing over the past hour or two. So in case you guys are wondering what is the latest moves that are going on with the Mets, not named potentially a groundbreaking Dylan Cease trade that many of us would love to see, including myself. No, it's on the reliever front. The Mets are bringing back Drew Smith, but they still do have room. And listen, the Mets can also bring back another reliever that went down with reconstructive Tommy John surgery this past season. And not just Drew Smith, guys, but bring back Brooks Raley. I don't know how many times I need to say this. If there's at all a level of interest for the Mets to get the job done, then you got to get the job done, folks. That's what I'm saying. That is absolutely what I'm thinking right there, because not only was Brooks Raley a very formidable lefty option in this bullpen when healthy in 2023, and then a very small start to 2024 up until he went down with his injury, like Drew Smith, Raley would be absolutely nails for the Mets. He could return as soon as in sometime in the second half this year, or at absolute latest in the early goings of 2026, naturally. So, like Drew Smith, I hope that Brooks Raley is another signing the Mets make, but I understand that in order for the Mets to make a signing like this, that they would also have to make the proper roster room and roster moves. And speaking of roster moves and roster room, let's talk about where the Mets 40-man currently stands, because by bringing back Drew Smith here on this one-year deal, $1 million there, with I think a $2 million 2026 club option. So again, all control there to the Mets, which I absolutely love. But let's also not forget that the Mets are currently finding themselves in a position where in order to bring in guys, you also need to either get rid of guys or you need to put guys on this 60-day IL, and that's what they have done. Kristen Scott, who's still ramping up from his reconstructed Tommy John surgery that he had at the end of the 2024 season for the Mets or so, he'll be out all of 2025 as well, naturally. He's in spring training working on things, and he's looking good and ready to go, hopefully, just to continue to ramp up throughout the year and be healthy for 2026. But Scott and Drew Smith alike were placed on the 60-day IL today, and that was to make roster room for, yes, you guessed it, everybody, the Polar Bear and Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso is officially back to the Mets, folks. I'm so happy to say that. I know that we all knew that he was coming back once they had signed him through John Heyman, among others there, whoever was the initial person to report it there on the Alonso news, passing and what have you, and then to see it officially official, this is big news for this Mets team to bring the Polar Bear and Pete Alonso back to Queens, because not only do the Mets need Alonso back to a certain degree in the sense of really rounding out their roster for 2025, but Pete Alonso certainly needed the Mets, and this was a relationship that I not only fully expect to rekindle, but for the Mets to work the market in Alonso as well as they did, to reach just a one-year commitment with a second-year player option. Yeah, that's a slam dunk deal if you're David Stearns and the Mets, in my humble opinion, and no better man to hear when talking about Pete Alonso than Mr. David Stearns himself. So let's go ahead and do exactly that, folks, when we talk about him, but we're also actually going to hear some brief remarks on Drew Smith that I meant to play for you guys earlier.
With Drew back, what's the value of just keeping him with the organization? You know, obviously this year being kind of a full rehab for him.
Yeah, he's been a long tenured Met who's given a lot to the organization, is a good teammate, is a good pitcher. And so I think having continuity in his care, that he can be under our supervision for his rehab in a place that he's comfortable, where he trusts the medical staff, is important for both sides. And then hopefully this goes well and he's pitching big innings for us in 26.
With Drew back,
there you go. So that's the simple answer, sweet and to the point from Mr. David Stearns. And now let's hear David's thoughts on Pete Alonso returning.
Yeah, the Alonso negotiation took a while. In your opinion, what was it at the end that finally got it to cross the finish line?
Look, I think both parties want to get it done, and that's a really good foundation for a deal. We're thrilled to have Pete back. I think
Also, most of you guys know this by now, but in the graphic down below, if you're wondering why does it still say free agent next to contract, it's just because I made that graphic going back to literally November when he was first a free agent. So disregard that. It's a 2-year, $54 million deal, $30 million first year, including a $10 million signing bonus, and then a 2026 player option that he obviously will more than likely not be opting into.
Pete is thrilled to be back. He was here briefly the other day for his physical. And you could see the genuine excitement that he had to be back in this building, and we're really happy we were able to make it happen.
Why is, in your words, Pete Alonso so motivated to have an elite Pete Alonso year?
Look, I think he wants to win. I mean, I think what he expressed to us is he wants to win a World Series as a Met, and he knows a big part of our ability to do that is him producing. I think Pete's had good years the last couple of years, but not as good, not as elite, not at the standard that he set at the front end of his career. And I think he is very motivated to demonstrate that he is capable of putting up those types of numbers.
Yeah, I think we all can agree that Pete Alonso had a very underwhelming 162 last season. And I'm hoping that this is one of the few times, that I'm talking about it again, and that it'll be that. And then 2025 is an electric Alonso year with runners in scoring position, high leverage 2-out situations, you name it. That's what I'm looking forward to. But Alonso knows that he betted on himself. It didn't work. He couldn't handle the high-pressure cooker situation. So he has a lot to prove this year. But I think that this is a fantastic chip on his shoulder where Alonso dictates things, right? He controls. And I think for Alonso to come off of what was nothing short of a tremendous playoff run for the Mets with his home run heroics, again, 4 different games where Pete Alonso had a home run for the Mets. I mean, you really can't ask for much more from him and his playoff performance. And to build off of that, to really piggyback off of that, and what was a great postseason run, I think is going to bode so well for Alonso, not only his confidence to return the Mets, but to also be with Juan Soto for the first time in his career. And hopefully for Alonso's sake, one of many years in the Mets organization with Juan Soto paired with him, Francisco Lindor, Mark EV, Mr. Mark Vientos, Francisco Alvarez, and everyone else in company. So that is what I have to say about that, everybody. My Mets fans, I would love to hear from you guys in the chat right now, in the comments down below, as you guys continue to smash a like and subscribe on as your first chime in for our live edition of our Big Mets Updates segment. Usually I make these in right around a 20 to 30 minute video format, and this won't be too elongated of a live show today. But there were so many topics that continue to come out that I want to touch on today. I told my guy Pat Ragazzo, I'm like, Pat, you want to come on stream over the next couple days? Today was the day that lined up with our schedule best, so that's why we're here to make it happen now. So, guys, continue to let me know your thoughts on Alonso returning the Mets, and how do you see him best fit in this Mets lineup? Do you think he's best slotted back in the 4-hole like he usually hits? Would you like him moved up slightly in the 3-hole? Would you like Alonso moved somewhere that we haven't talked about as much on the platform? Where do you think Alonso's best, and how do you foresee the Mets to go about their lineup configuration this spring with a locked and loaded, healthy lineup? Let me see in the chat in the comments down below. I thank you guys so much for doing exactly that. Now, as we continue on the conversation, we're going to be bringing in my guy Pat here in just a second. But before I do bring in Pat Ragazzo, folks, I do first need to put you on to the brilliance, and I mean literal brilliance, that is going on right now in Port St. Lucie with Clay Holmes, guys. We had fans writing off this move for the Mets initially, that, oh, Clay Holmes as a starter is going to be nothing short of a joke. And I have a feeling that just like how Sham and I and Luis Severino made every fan and their mother that was negative about those moves eat their words and then some, I think that we're going to have a very similar reality here when we talk about someone like Clay Holmes. And the reason why I'm so uber confident in someone like Clay Holmes this offseason is not only has he been ramping up brilliantly that we're seeing in Port St. Lucie, but he has the right surrounding cast. This is not a Mets team that I could comfortably tell you that 3.5, 4+ years ago that, oh yeah, I'd be ecstatic to see what they can do when looking at production, right? But now when you look at Holmes and what he can provide for this Mets team, knowing you have Desi Driscoll, who we worked with in the Yankees organization last year, the Yanks' former assistant pitching coach, Carlos Mendoza, that he had a level of relationship with during his time in the Yankee organization, and everyone else in company, that stands out a lot to me right away about Clay Holmes. Then what also stands out is how motivated he is to be the best starter he can be, right? Clay Holmes, for those that aren't aware, has been at Port St. Lucie for a month already. Yes, you heard that correctly. Per Mike Puma, that I heard talk earlier today with the New York Post, He stayed there for Port St. Lucie. That, yeah, Clay Holmes has been here for better portion of a month already. And you want to know how impressive that is, as he's currently taking BP beside me, the guys that you guys can see him currently throwing to Jesse Winker. He struck out Jesse Winker and is one at bat. And then Jesse actually just missed a home run and one of the times that he made contact too. But Clay Holmes was chefing it up with Jesse Winker and a bunch of other Mets batters today. And what stands out a lot is not only did he throw 3 innings for a guy that's already been at PSL for pretty much a month or north of that already, but you're having a guy that's ramping up so quickly as a starter that he's already given you a 3-inning minimum in Port St. Lucie. That's very impressive to me. So that tells me that Clay Holmes really took it seriously as soon as he signed with the Mets to be stretched out as a starter. He's on record stating in previous years, he absolutely tried to build himself up to handle a somewhat starter workload. At least a good amount of chunk of innings, north of 100 each year is what Holmes is trying to ramp up for. But now he's going to have to do that. And the Mets have no innings limit on the case of Clay Holmes. They're very excited about him, and he's refining and retooling his arsenal, which is also exciting because there is a new pitch in his arsenal, which is called a kick change. And for those that don't know what a kick change is, I'd love to defer to my guy Isaac Rothman. That many of you guys know Isaac is a reoccurring pitching contributor on our platform that's going to be doing amazing things in independent leagues and one other things as he's working his way up there in the baseball analytics space. But what Isaac relayed to me when I asked him right away, what is a kick change? He made it very simple, where pretty much one of the fingers that Clay Holmes uses, either his pointer finger or his middle finger usually, he lifts one of them up slightly. You kind of see that knuckle slightly raised when he actually holds his grip of the baseball. And the reason why he slightly lifts his one finger is because it creates this essential spike motion with his changeup that creates a greater drop in said pitch versus his usual changeup. So this is one of the multiple pitches as somewhat new that Holmes is working with and fine-tuning in his arsenal. He's also utilizing his four-seam fastball quite a bit more, which I think is notable, only considering four-seam fastball for relievers, even for guys that sit, again, 97, the way that a guy like Clay, again, throws absolute gas, especially with the sink piece. To work more of that four-seam, again, is what you're going to need to do as a starter. You can't be reliant as just like a two-pitch guy, basically. You're going to need a 3-4 pitch mix, so not only does he have the four-seam that he's working heavily more of, not only does he have, obviously, the sink that we know plenty about, but also there in the change, but he may also add a cutter or a gyro cutter as well to really balance things off well with the remaining aspects of his arsenal. But Clay Holmes, as I said, is looking fantastic in early spring. From people that I've talked to, not only respected reporters like Pat, who we're about to bring on, but others in the space, they've all had the same exact sentiment, saying that, oh yeah, Clay Holmes is legit, he's here, he's locked in. And a lot of Yankee fans might be writing him off, but Yankee fans should be more concerned about the media wanting to hear from Garrett Cole and all their other star players how they're feeling about Juan Soto being a Met more than anything else, right? Talking about having your priorities straight. That's the Yankees way, baby. If you know, you know. Cue the sarcasm. But Clay Holmes, a former Yankee, now a foe to them, but a friend to us, with that beard, I think he's going to give the Mets a solid season. And again, there's a reason why Clay Holmes, at least through Fangraphs, has higher projections in 2025 than even Sean Manaea. Yeah, you heard that correctly, folks. Clay Holmes is expected to be a more valuable player with a 2.5 projected WAR than a 2 WAR or so there of Sean Manaea for the 2025 season. That's insane to say, but that goes to show just how high the expectations are for Clay Holmes and how much the advanced metrics, how much everyone in the community really loves Holmes' ability to stretch as a starter, just like Michael Cain, the former Yankee turned great now with the Padres. The former Met now turned great, not only Padre, but Kansas City Royal there, and Mr. Seth Lugo. There is an abundance of relievers turn starters, or starters turn relievers and turn starters again, and Clay Holmes finds himself in that category, and I'm just really excited to see more of him this spring. He's getting big swing and miss on these guys early, and I know it's literally February 12th, so again, take it with a heavy grain of salt, but Clay Holmes is a very good reliever at absolute minimum, and at maximum, he's one of the Mets' top starters in all of 2025. No, that isn't an outlandish statement. That's reality. That is how much upside someone like Clay Holmes has and how much confidence and I think intrigue the Mets have in seeing what they can get out of someone like him. But all right, guys, now let's bring in my guy here that plenty of you guys know, that being Pat Ragazzo. So let's get this all shoved up and set up, and then we will go from there. Pat, just continue on with what you were saying then, where we left off. Thank you.
Got it. I wish that I'm getting a little FOMO that I didn't go down this first week, just considering the buzz around the team right now, but once Monday rolls around, everybody has to be there, including Pete Alonso, who has not showed up yet. I'm not sure when he's going to show up, but next week is the week. It's just a lot to cram in at once. It's going to be a sprint. It's going to be exhausting, but it's always fun. And who doesn't love Florida in the winter? I mean, the dream is to go down there one day and live down there in the winter and spend the entire spring training there. But that's not a reality right now for some younger reporters in the game and young content creators. So, yeah, I mean, I'm excited for next week. I'm ready to get there. So I'm going down to Florida Sunday. I'm not going to camp until Monday, but yeah, no, definitely excited to get out of this snow of Jersey and cold, and I'm over it. So I'm ready for baseball, getting a little bit of the Sunday scaries, as you'd say, because I mean, we just fought through a 8.5-month war that they call as baseball season, from spring training last year to October 31st to Halloween, the day after Game 5 of the World Series, and it was long. And we've been in a slumber essentially for the last couple of months. And I thought the hibernation period would maybe last a little longer, but it didn't. That wasn't the case with the Pete Alonso saga. Really, since about mid January or so, it's been nonstop, and it's really hasn't been. Other than the Super Bowl, the second half of the Super Bowl, it hasn't really been too much downtime, as in compared to other years. So yeah, I mean, ready to do it again next year, I guess, with when Pete Alonso's a free agent again. Hopefully not. With the length of his free agency next year when he most likely opts out. But yeah, definitely excited to get going. It's going to be a long year, and we all need to pace ourselves, yourself included.
Oh my God. Talk about pace. I feel like every time I try to get some type of pace going in the air, it just doesn't work out, because when you have a 162 and the Mets are the Mets, and as busy as the Mets have been under Steve Cohen, I feel like every single day, or every single week at least, we have something of significance to talk about, to break down, whether that's regarding the on-field product of actual games happening or not, with a lot of the news and rumblings going on each offseason that you do a great job continuing to cover. So Pat, now that we know how Port St. Lucie is going to, started been over the past couple of days that catchers and pitchers have officially reported there, I want to ask you your initial thoughts as to kind of hearing David Stearns reaffirm something that some fans, including myself, don't love to hear, and that is the idea of Jose Iglesias not returning this Mets team. As we know, Nick Madrigal will be repping number 11. That was officially announced, the same number that Jose Iglesias was wearing this past season. He is that utility infielder, former top pick, with some minor league options left. The Mets have Luis Angel Acuna and some other kids in house, so it appears that they want to go more in that direction. But I have to say, I'm a little surprised still. I feel like maybe this is the Alonso optimism kicking into me, where I always felt he was going to circle back to the Mets. I still feel like there's a world where Jose Iglesias is a Met at the end of the day, but David Stearns has me feeling otherwise.
Yeah, well, I mean, the proof was in the pudding. I mean, they made a 1-year offer to Iglesias, as I reported, prior to signing Madrigal. When they signed Madrigal, that clearly signaled that the OMG era is over in terms of Jose Iglesias. And they have been saying all winter how they want the young guys to get a shot. That means Acuna. That means maybe eventually Jet Williams. I think he fits in center field as his quickest path to the big leagues. They just, it doesn't make sense. Mauricio, Beatty, Vientos, like once they got Pete back, like there's really no spot for Iglesias. And Mendoza said it yesterday that they're going to try Madrigal at short this spring. Like that signaled to me, okay, doors closed, it's probably locked. And then David Stearns officially locked it, or deadbolted it, you could say, when he spoke to reporters today, saying that they're, it doesn't make sense in terms of their roster construction. And I know that the Mets made a 1-year offer to Iglesias. He's looking for a 1-year deal, but clearly they couldn't come to an agreement, whether it was money, whether it was other things. I don't know. But yeah, it was time. You know what I mean? The Mets are essentially running back the OMG 2024 Mets from last year. They are with the same team, but now they have Juan Soto. And they swapped Severino for Montas, and they swapped Clay Holmes for Quintana. So Senga's going to be healthy now. They brought in AJ Minter. They brought Stanek back. They swapped Minter for Maton. Dedniel Nunez is coming back from injury. Jose Budo was gassed at the end of the year. Now he'll have a full year as a long reliever. They're not going to stretch him out as a starter. They have Griffin Canning now and Tyler McGill competing for the 6th spot, and Paul Blackburn coming back from injury at some point. Like this Mets team's pretty loaded, and really, I mean, backup shortstop is something that they need to obviously have covered to start the year, but that's either going to be Acuna or Madrigal. We'll see how Madrigal does. He does have that option on that split deal, and Acuna has options still too. But I think if Acuna they can find ways to get him in the lineup regularly, whether it's in second base, it's at second base or third. If he's getting regular at bats, then it makes sense to keep him in the big leagues and see what he's got. If last year's cameo was just a facade or a mirage, you could say, or if it's actually, a guy who maybe was needed to be challenged and be on the big stage, and he did handle it very well, and they're impressed by that, even if it wasn't a small sample size. And he can make an impact in the field. He can make an impact on the base path with his speed. Like Acuna, I really like it. He's the brother of a MVP winner and superstar, and Ronald Acuna. And yeah, I think that Acuna is a very exciting player. I know talent evaluators, former GMs, whoever I've spoken to, who have said that they're more high on Jet Williams and his ceiling as opposed to Acuna. And it's because Acuna hits the ball on the ground a lot, among some other things. I mean, he had a really bad year in AAA last year, and he doesn't have much power. And Jet Williams is, a potential rising star, coming off an injured year in the minors, but he was an all-star in the Arizona Fall League coming back from a wrist injury. That's very promising. So the kid's only 21 years old, barely, I believe, right now. And like I said, if Jose Siri doesn't hit, then Jet Williams might be the center fielder at some point this season. That's something that I'm saying. That's something that's probably worth an article, honestly. But that's just kind of my prediction and maybe projection right now. But I'm not I don't work for the Mets front office, and so that's not my call. But that's just kind of the way that I see it right now with kind of how their alignment is. And again, Iglesias for vibes, yes, but they don't need him. A team like the Yankees could use Jose Iglesias. But yeah, I don't know if he fits their mold in terms of clubhouse culture and chemistry with the group of players they have over there. I think they'd embrace him, but I think the Mets are a better fit for him. I just don't really know what Iglesias is thinking or going to do or what offers he has. But, in terms of insurance, I think the Yankees are a good fit for Iglesias. Despite the fact that they keep saying they're going to go with Oswald Peraza and DJ LeMahieu and Oswaldo Cabrera. And Oswaldo Cabrera is a very good, decent player, like a good utility guy. It's just, is he an everyday player? He has not shown that yet. And Oswald Peraza, I feel like he's had some chances, and it's sink or swim now for him. So they kind of got to find that out too. So if they don't wind up adding Iglesias, that probably would be the reason why.
So to go from the top here with Jose, one, I don't want to hear you mention the Yankees and his name ever again, Pat. I know that you cover them at the same time, but I don't want to hear it, okay? So let's start there. Cookie Carrasco had his interview earlier today there, saying how he's always wanted to be, a Yankee at some point in his career. So I'm happy for Cookie, wishing him well there in the Bronx. But on Jose's front, what's fascinating to me is you yourself reported that the Mets offered him a contract offer. Yeah, we hear from David Stearns today pretty much saying how, we don't want necessarily a guy there that's pretty much going to hold up the spot entirely because he doesn't have minor league options, right? So it's interesting to hear that remark from David, considering the fact that the Mets have already went these certain lengths to bring back Iglesias, and the fact that the Mets did not bring Iglesias back when it's a 1-year offer that he's looking for is telling that obviously Scott Boras is talking in that year, looking at high AV, the best he could get, obviously because he hasn't had this limited of a sample size leading to this much success for Jose in his career. He's always been a high contact hitter, but the power is a big thing. I mean, like a 440 slug is not something you usually expect from Jose, and on base percentage north of 400.
You're spot on with the projections. Yes, that's a big part of it, and the age. He's very valuable, but yeah, it comes down to two things, and you mentioned it at the beginning of this, of that point you were making, that when it comes to building a roster, it's about construction and it's about flexibility.
Right.
And Jose Iglesias, I think, fits with the construction, but he doesn't fit with the flexibility that the Mets want. And It's a long year. I mean, even think of a starting rotation. Teams probably use, like in a good year, will use like 10 to 11 starters a year throughout a season, maybe a little less, but you kind of got to be covered there. You have to have depth, of course, and Iglesias has the experience, and he turned it around. I mean, JD Martinez said this on John Heyman and Joel Sherman's The Show podcast about how he came up from his rehab assignment at the beginning of the year, and he told Mendoza asked, "What are you seeing down there?" And he said, "You got to bring Iglesias up." And yeah, JD Martinez made a big impact in the clubhouse as well, even though he ran out of gas in the end of the year. Like, he's an older player. Like, the Mets don't want a repeat of that. Like, those guys would be great as coaches and advisors, of course. And, maybe they'll wind up back with the Mets eventually as, in those roles. But I think Candelita might be, signing a contract to perform at Citi Field a couple times a year. Like Frank, Johnny Fontaine from The Godfather, when they moved out to Vegas. They moved out to Vegas and they signed a deal. Anything for my Godfather with, appearing for, a couple times a year at their Vegas club that they were buying in the casino. So, I mean, maybe they can get Iglesias to do the same thing, but it's not going to be, it'll be as a performer and not as a player, it seems.
Yeah, and the versatility aspect, I can understand where David Stearns is coming from, and that's one of those things where, like, I'm not happy to see it, but I understand the rationale behind it. I do think that until Jose Iglesias officially signs somewhere, I'm not writing that off just yet, for the simple reason of Nick Madrigal. Obviously, the Mets brought him in for a reason. They want to see how we will perform this spring, but he's on a split contract, meaning that there isn't true tie, like a slam dunk lock that he needs to, for certain, be a part of this team as we look into the 2025 season. So that right there is why I think that there's still a route for Jose Iglesias. I also think that oh wait, hold on. I'm hearing an echo right now. That's from you, Pat.
I can't hear you on the call anymore.
Now you can.
Yes, and now the echo's gone because I just muted you.
Okay. All right. I think we'll be good then. If there's a slight echo, everybody, regardless, I apologize. But no less, getting back to what I was saying on Jose Iglesias, the veteran leadership is another thing too that I thought was very appealing for this team, right? If you're going to have Acuna, if you're going to have Iglesias, if he's willing to be kind of selfless like Jesse Winker and be in a role in pretty much wherever they want to put him, whenever they want to put him, for the sake of how immediately of an impact he has when he gets those at-bats, as well as those late-game defensive replacements, and really being a true mentor, kind of having the arm around the shoulder the way that Mark Vientos had that with JD Martinez last spring, is a way that I kind of saw Iglesias being that to a degree, the Acuñas of the world, the Mauricios, the Williams, the Beatties, what have you. So maybe that was shame on me for thinking that, but, you know, there's just so many reasons as to Iglesias coming off of such a selfless player as to why we see that fit. I understand David Stearns' point of view, so I won't beat this drum anymore, but until he signs somewhere else, I'm not completely closing off that reunion just yet, because a lot of people thought Alonso wasn't going to return as we were officially starting to pivot, and look at how that panned out, right? It's not like Iglesias has just this absolutely loaded market with all these teams chomping at the heels to try to acquire him. He's in a very limited market as a veteran utility man, but I think the vibes, which are important, as well as the veteran leadership, is what the Mets will miss most in someone like Jose. So this is really it, Jose. Thank you so much for everything you did for the 2024 Amazons. What I would argue, he was just as valuable as a guy like Francisco Lindor, up there, and like the team morale, at least. Maybe not so much the on-field product every time, but certainly in the clubhouse character and the connection that he had. So Pat, I won't be long-winded with you because I know you got to get out of here soon. So one of the final comments that I have for you before we get out of here actually has a little bit more to do about what we saw from some key updates today. We saw, Rodney Mauricio, obviously he's not going to be playing until right around mid-March because he's ramping up slowly but surely, coming back from his year-plus long injury. Deno Nunez is looking very good, which I'm happy to see in Port St. Lucie. He's expected to have a key role in this bullpen. Jet Williams obviously is going to be a guy getting some reps in center field, and as you alluded to, might actually have a route where he could crack the Mets at some point this year in the outfield. I feel like that's Drew Gilbert's job to lose, barring changes, but I like the optimism there. AJ Minter has been looking sharp, even though that there's still a question mark as to if he'll be exactly ready for opening day or not. But my question has to do not so much with AJ Minter, but a fellow southpaw reliever that could impact the Mets, and that's Wandy Peralta. Pat, you threw it out there just over the past couple days that the Mets could go out and try to make a trade for Wandy Peralta. Wandy's K to walk ratio was horrendous, but like Tim Hill, he is a ground ball pitcher, and he's one of the better ones in Major League Baseball making something happen. So what do you have to say about at least the potential of the Mets getting a deal done there? Do you think that ship has completely sailed from the idea now that they brought in guys like Jason Hayward and Connor Joe to kind of have a platoon outfield going? Like, let me know your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, I guess from the Padres' perspective, maybe it doesn't make sense. And I know people who are familiar with AJ Preller's thinking who say that he doesn't want to break up the band despite the infighting with the power struggle that's going on in ownership there. And they're trying to cut payroll and budget. And Preller wants to win now. He's aggressive. He's a very tough GM. He's got a lot of respect because he's a hard negotiator and he's an aggressive roster builder and executive and decision maker. So I think that Peralta had not so great of a year, and he had an abductor strain that ended it pretty early, and he did not fare well against lefties last year for the first time in his career. Could have been because of the abductor strain affecting him as a lefty given his delivery, and he was still good against righties. So he's got 2 club options the next 2 years. He's making like $4.5 million or $4.25 million or something like that this year. And then it's like $4.25 million, maybe the next 2 years each for a club, not a club option, sorry, a player option, I believe. So that's not really favorable for a team to acquire, but I just think it makes the most sense when you look at what the Mets tried to do in December, where they offered Marte for Hunter Harvey and similar salaries. Hunter Harvey's making $3.7 million this year, and he's a rental for 1 year. And you know, it would have been good for the Mets. Maybe they wouldn't have brought back Stanek, or maybe they wouldn't have gotten Minter. They probably still would have gotten a Minter type, but maybe not brought back Stanek. You know, having Hunter Harvey. And yeah, I just, that's like the similar concept with Marte, because again, it doesn't seem like they're going to make the trade for Dylan Cease right now, because it's just like it would be too costly. And I had heard that they liked Michael King a lot, and that was more realistic to be a deal that could come to fruition before the season, but I haven't heard anything since then. Obviously, King now has agreed to his new arbitration and got the mutual option for next year, which I don't understand that one, because
he's not getting traded. That's what that means. He's helping AJ Preller. He's being a good boy.
Yeah. So what it comes down to is like, yeah, at the trade deadline, if the Padres are out of it and have to sell off some guys, like Preller's not going to do that unless they're out of it, like way out of it. And like, they're a pretty good team. Like, the NL's tough, but the Padres are a good team. Like, I just don't see AJ Preller being a seller. So that's the risk that the Mets are taking, is like, yeah, he might be available. They might be available like at the deadline for half a season, and the price will be lower. But what are the odds that the Padres are going to sell? Probably not too high, unless they're an absolute disaster this year. And I think that they're a talented team. So unless they're super dysfunctional, which, you know, kind of seems to be the case the last couple of years, at least. Yeah, I don't see them really being a seller. And yeah, I mean, we're talking about like teams like the Pittsburgh Pirates are really ones to keep an eye on. Like, I think the Pirates might surprise some teams this year, or the league this year, and you know, maybe contend for a wild card, because you know, they have Paul Skeens, they have Mitch Keller, they signed Tommy Pham, like they have some. Brian Hayes is very good defensively. Maybe he bounces back at the plate. O'Neal Cruz, you know, not a good big payroll to work with, but they have Bednar, who's probably going to bounce back this year. They have Colin Holderman, for shout out Daniel Vogelback, who's now a special hitting assistant for the Pirates. And
yes, he is.
You know, he obviously was a Pirate, and you know, Billy Epler made that infamous trade of Vogelback for Holderman, and people still talk about it because Holderman is, you know, he's young, he's youngish, he's controllable, and you know, he's a pretty solid reliever that the Mets would love to have in their bullpen right now and have under team control. But yeah, I mean, I think the Pirates could surprise some people, and if they don't, I know that the Mets and other teams, plenty of teams, will be interested in trading for Bednar. Especially he's got another year of control left under his belt. And I had reported this maybe a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, that the Pirates aren't interested in selling low on Bednar coming off a tough year. But if he rebuilds his value by the deadline, then, you know, he has another year of control. He's not just a half a season rental. So they could actually, this would be the time to trade him if they're not in it. You know, by the deadline. So that's something to keep an eye on. But again, that's months from now, and anything can happen, and you know, injuries and whatever else happen. And obviously it's super competitive at the deadline, where everyone needs pitching. Everyone and their brother needs pitching. Starting pitching is always astronomically high, the price tag, no matter what time of year, but also at the deadline. And everybody always needs relief pitching. So yeah, I think the Mets are pretty much set, probably, besides like depth moves coming up. I think the Mets would have been, it would have been smart to sign Tyler Matzik to a minor league deal. The Yankees beat them to the punch. I had reported this a couple of weeks ago that, you know, Mets, Yankees, Dodgers, I think the Phillies, and maybe the Red Sox, and a bunch of the big teams were on hand watching Matzik's bullpen in Irvine, California. And he looked strong and healthy, I was told by people who were there. And yeah, I think that would have been good if to be had on a minor league deal. I mean, I think that would have been good for the Mets, but Matzik's coming off some injuries, and he wants to get back on track. And the Yankees have a reputation specifically with left-handed relievers. Look at what they did with Tim Hill last year, and that's a big reason why Tim Hill wanted to stay. So and he did, of course. So yeah, I mean, you know, deals like that are something to keep an eye on. Lou Trevino is still out there. You know, there's some other guys that could be had on bargains, and it's spring training now. So now is when the minor league deals will start falling in the next couple of weeks.
Well, you talk about bargains. I think a great one that just touched down for a contending team. I'm actually blanking as to who just signed him, but John Brebbia just signed a deal, a one-year deal, $2 million today. For Tigers, that's who it was, and that was a really good. That's a sneaky bullpen pickup. John Brebbia is like one of your favorite like bad relievers in a way. Like, he has really good stuff. He just fluctuates quite a bit like any other Jekyll and Hyde reliever, but he's got good stuff for sure. I like that pickup. And speaking of relievers, and this is what I'll leave you with, Pat, you know, we talked first in the conversation on Wandy Peralta. I would love him as a lefty option. That way you can have AJ Minter as a true high leverage guy always, where you're not just having to defer to him at sometimes, mainly because, oh, you're facing the heart of the order that has 3 key lefty batters versus just throwing him in there the 8th inning more often than not, facing lefties, righties, what have you, just for him to dominate and do his thing. By bringing in a guy like Wandy, that helps out by actually having more of a true lefty specialist that can be utilized in both low and high leverage in various situations, kind of throwing him out there whenever called upon, kind of like the Danny Young role, if you will, but to replace Danny Young, that'd be a massive upgrade. Right now, the Mets lefty depth in their farm is currently AJ Minter, Danny Young, and Genesis Cabrera. I think Cabrera has a good shot on actually besting Danny Young for that bullpen spot, but we'll find out. I also do know that David Bednar, who you mentioned, I will just take the claim for right now. If the Mets acquired Bednar at all this year in a Marte-related trade, that's because of me. I called this like 2 months ago, literally, that, hey, we need to see Starling Marte back to Pittsburgh where he started his career. Makes sense for them, a veteran to pair with McCutchen. In return, we get a guy coming off of a down year, but obviously has control, makes sense. And David Bednar, who the Mets wouldn't even need to utilize as a true setup guy each time because they have setup options in their bullpen with the Staniks, with the Minters, with the Budos to a degree, Danel Nunez's, among others. So great conversation, Pat. I can't thank you so much for coming on. I apologize for some of the technical difficulties, but hopefully next time we have you back on, hopefully maybe sometime, if not during your trip in Port St. Lucie, then after the fact, kind of recap things a bit. We'll gladly have you back on again. But before I let you go, please let everyone know where they can find you and what work you may have coming out in the near future that you have yet to announce to anybody.
Yeah, of course, Tyler. Phil, thanks for having me as always, and
course,
excited to come back on after camp. So, yeah, I mean, check out my work and my staff's work at Mets on SI. Follow our new Facebook page, Pat Ragazzo, Mets on SI. Please shoot that a follow because that's new, and we're going to be posting a lot of stories there. But, check out all the articles. We post on Twitter. We post on the Facebook page every day. And we also have, the URL, obviously, si.com/MLB/Mets. So check us out. Got a pretty big team now, a lot of talented writers there. And, I'm still doing my thing as well. So I'm just, steering the pirate ship the best I can. And, always good to chat it up with you, and excited to get to Florida. So things are about to get crazy. So buckle up.
Yeah, buckle up indeed. Appreciate you again, Pat. Thank you so much for coming on. To everyone that watched live on a replay, thank you guys kindly for that. We'll be back live in the next couple days. Should breaking news not happen from now up until then of some sort, we'll have usual content out each and every day throughout the week, all week long, all off season and in season long here on WardyNYM. That is Mets beat reporter Pat Ragazzo. I'm Tyler Ward.